Welcome back to another Half Mile Coffee podcast.
Yep.
I'm Jason.
Nicole.
All right. So this week, or this month actually, we're going to answer 3 questions that have come from y'all. What has more caffeine, light or dark roast coffee?
It's a good one.
It's a good question. There's
Yeah.
a lot of science in there. It's a pretty complicated answer. So we're going to hope to not put you to sleep. The other one is starting a cafe. How do I pick a roaster? Because there's a lot of them out of there. I mean, I know in my Facebook stream, I am constantly seeing new roasters that have different offerings. And then 3 or D, no, 1, 2, 3, D. Yes, 3. What's the difference between light, medium, and dark roast? Really? So I love that. That was a great question. What is the difference between light, medium, dark, roast, ... Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. So let's start with question number 1. What has more caffeine, dark or light roast coffee? So the first thing I want to talk about is different types of coffee plants. And do they have different caffeine?
Oh, that's a really interesting question.
So, I mean, you got to kind of start there. There's 2 different kind of coffee plants,
Oh, right.
and one has twice the amount of caffeine as the other.
Right.
So which one has twice the amount of caffeine that you're less likely to drink in a specialty context, but more likely to drink in a commodity context?
Right. So that would be Robusta coffee. So there's 2 kinds of coffee, and one is Arabica and one is Robusta. Robusta is a lot more caffeine, and Arabica is less caffeine, and it makes it very interesting because Robusta is more bitter, and that makes it more insect resistant. It also has more coffee per plant, so that's why it's a commodity favorite, because it's a lot more efficient.
Yeah, and there's some brands out there like Death Wish coffee that'll add Robusta. I know we have friends that do specialty Robusta that we're thinking about.
Super curious about that.
Yeah, trying some kind of blend with that just to play around. But typically Robusta has more caffeine. So traditionally when you're going to drink a Robusta is going to be a Folgers.
Yep, Folgers, Maxwell House. I think Folgers has probably the most Robusta per can in their original classic blend. And then Maxwell House and Chock-full Nuts are mostly a blend, but you really have to dig deep to find out exactly what is in their coffee can. But it's either all Robusta or a significant portion of Robusta.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that bitterness that you're tasting in a Folgers is caffeine. Right? Caffeine presents or tastes like bitterness.
Absolutely.
So, and then the second thing I think people need to be aware of is altitude affects the caffeine content in coffee. Did you know this?
I did not know this.
So the lower the coffee, the higher the caffeine content. And so again, we're back to commodity coffees like Brazil, which can be one of the lowest grown coffees, or Vietnam, Indonesia. Some of these coffees that are grown at sea level, they have more caffeine. And I don't know, I'd be curious as you talk to some of your friends at Starbucks that are Q graders. I know Starbucks chooses to use Indonesian coffees a lot. So I wonder if they do that for caffeine content in their coffees. But yeah, so when you're choosing, if you want more caffeine, choose a lower grown coffee. But I think the other side of that coin is if you're caffeine sensitive, try like a really high elevation coffee like a Colombia, Ethiopian, and this could also help you if you're looking for decafs. So we have a friend that's super sensitive about decafs, about caffeine, and even with decafs, based on the caffeine process, decaffeinating process, there's residual, and so we like the ethyl acetate or sugarcane process because it retains the character of the coffee, but there's still some caffeine there. And the lower that coffee is, the more caffeine it's still going to have. So if you're sensitive to caffeine and you're choosing a decaf, I would say water process is probably the cleanest, right? That removes the most caffeine.
Right.
We don't care for it because you tend to lose a lot of the flavor of the coffee. But also, if you had a high grown water processed coffee or Swiss water processed coffee, you're probably going to have a really decaffeinated cup. So pay attention to altitude.
Cool. That's interesting. Interesting fact.
Yeah. So, and then what about the coffee roasting process? So we're back to dark versus light.
Yeah, this
right?
is a very controversial, interesting, well-debated topic.
So when I was searching around on the internet for this, I like to look this up periodically because you think you know the answer and then somebody else has got an answer. But my answer is always darker roasted coffees have more caffeine, but it's not because of anything in the roasting process that draws that out. Again, the altitude of the coffee is going to drive that. The type of coffee plant is going to drive the amount of caffeine in the bean. And then dark roasted coffees, well, let's back up. When you're roasting a coffee, essentially what you're doing is reducing moisture and making that coffee lighter. So we talked about this before. The coffee roasting process has 3 phases. The first phase is getting rid of all the moisture in the coffee, and we call that the drying phase. Second phase is kind of the Maillard phase, when you're roasting it to a certain temperature under a certain time to get it to first crack. First crack is really, and it's an audible crack, it is moisture escaping the coffee bean. And so if you think about the water content being in the coffee, right? We look for 9 to 12% moisture when we buy. You're losing moisture the longer you roast it. So we will have a weight loss in the roasting process. And so, like if I roast 5 pounds, I get 4 out, right? So for 5 pounds of green coffee, like say our Nicaraguan, and that's not even that dark, we'll yield 4 pounds. So that's significant amount of weight loss, 12 to 15%. So what is that? You talk a lot about brewing, Nicole. So how does that affect the brewing process, which would end up yielding more or less caffeine in the cup?
I think the more you can extract out of the bean, the more caffeine you're going to get out of the bean. So your grind matters, your water temperature matters, and so we have a friend who brought in some ground coffee for us because he wanted us to grind it that way for a French press, and it was very fine. And I think that he's going to get the most caffeine out of our coffee in that fine grind because he's just going to extract so much of the available solids and available caffeine out of there. So it's easier to extract out of darker roasts. It's harder to extract out of lighter roasts. So lighter roasts, you can extract more if you increase the temperature. Darker roasts, you can easily over-extract them if your temperature is, hot.
So I think hot. So that's 2 good things, right? There's grind size.
Yep.
There's temperature involved. Both of those influence how much caffeine or total dissolved solids you're going to get out of the coffee, but also the density of the coffee. If you think about all the weight that it's lost, if I weigh a coffee and say I'm going to put 63 grams of coffee into a brewer, which is what we usually brew with our Aiden in the morning. So 63 grams of dark roast and 63 grams of light roast are going to be different densities and volumes of coffee. And so there was a scientific study, but most people don't do it that way, right? They'll fill a scooper up. But even that, still with a scooper, the volume's different on a light roast versus dark roast because there's less water right? Less weight of water weight and more weight of actual coffee that is going to be extracted with hot water. So they did a study. People that weigh their coffee get 36% more caffeine out of the coffee than people who just use a scooper when it comes to a dark roast coffee and caffeine extraction. So we'll sum it up here this way. So you're going to get more caffeine from a dark roasted coffee depending on how you brew it, depending on whether you weigh it or scoop it, and depending on the altitude of that coffee and what origin that coffee is, what type of coffee plant it is, right?
Yep. So
if I wanted the maximum caffeine, like maximum, I would go with a Robusta.
Yep.
That's high grown, or low grown Robusta, which is all of them.
French roast Robusta.
Yeah, and then that thing is just burnt to a crisp, so I could get as much burnt coffee into my coffee pot as possible.
Copious amounts of cream and sugar to get it down.
Yeah. So, but again, that's probably. I mean, I would love to see the difference between coffee content or caffeine content from espresso brew, right? Which is, if everybody knows, espresso is ground to be like sand, but it's also put under pressure. That's the difference. Like, there's no espresso bean. Espresso is a brewing technique that takes finely ground coffee, puts it under pressure, usually 9 bars of pressure, to extract a 2-to-1 yield, which is a really highly concentrated syrupy coffee. And so that I would expect your espresso probably has a lot more caffeine than a brewed cup, ounce for ounce.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
So it's not an easy question to answer, but it's a really interesting question because there's so many variables. And so hopefully that answers that person's question, or at least gives you way more about coffee than you probably wanted to know. You're probably like,
we're really good at that.
Which coffee do I grab off the shelf? Because then the hard part is, I mean, you can go grab something that's a Vietnamese coffee that's roasted super dark, that's a Robusta, but it just tastes like garbage.
We can't. I've never seen a Vietnamese
or just tastes horrible
coffee on the shelf.
What? Like, not a single origin, but I'm sure that Robusta is, you get a Robusta coffee somewhere. Yeah. So, okay. All right. The next question is, do you remember what it is?
Is it, I'm starting a coffee shop, and how do I know what coffee to buy?
Yes. So I'm going to put you on the spot here because I usually handle these questions. So what would you say is, I'm opening a coffee shop. It's been my lifelong dream. I love coffee.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. What should I be thinking about when I'm approaching a roaster?
Yeah, so I love that this particular coffee shop owner loves coffee, because that seems almost unusual that coffee shop owners love coffee. But I would say that go to your local roaster and ask to taste the coffee. Ask for a cupping or a tasting and talk to them about their coffee. They should be extremely knowledgeable about where their beans come from, how they're roasting them, and they should give you their wholesale pricing. And yeah, I would say that's a good start for a cafe.
So that was very good. You summed up basically everything I'm going to say in a brief sentence, but I'm going to break it down a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Do that.
So this is what I want to break down. So first thing I would ask, so what kind of cafe are you going to be? Are you going to be drink-centric or coffee-centric?
Yes.
2 different kinds of things, experiences. Mm-hmm. So, and what do I mean by that? Go into a cafe sometime that has espresso and ask for a 1-on-1 or a straight espresso. And you are going to see whether that is a drink shop or a coffee shop, because most specialty cafes can give you a 1-in-1, which is a single shot of espresso. They take that other single shot and they produce basically a cappuccino or cortado, which is 1-to-1 milk or 2-to-1 milk. I think cappuccino is 3-to-1 milk. So they'll produce you something. Good ones will ask you, what do you want that other drink to be? I remember we went to Ladder in Spokane, and this is how I assess cafes. The first time I go to one, I'm like, can I get a 1-in-1? And they're like, sure. And sometimes they'll just give you what they're going to give you, right? So the good ones will ask, and I appreciate that. And so what that'll show you is, is their coffee good enough to do a pure shot of espresso and have it be like really nice, right? Mm-hmm. Really syrupy, have some sweetness to it, not have too much bite. It'll have bite, right? But not too much bite. Or is it like a Dutch Brothers? Like, no, I don't think anybody confuses Dutch Brothers for a coffee-centric business. Nobody's going there for a straight espresso drink or a black cup of a single origin pour over or a special drink, right? So that's what I would ask. The first thing I would ask, like, what kind of coffee experience do you want your customers to have?
Right.
And those are two different roasters. And I would break it down this way too. So then it goes into price. So you are going to get cheaper coffee if you really don't care what the coffee tastes like.
Yeah, because you can just really buy it from U.S. Foods. Like wherever you're sourcing all the rest of your stuff, you can just grab whatever they have too. So, or there's cafes here that go to the bulk bins at Winco, and that's their coffee.
Yeah. So, I mean, if really you're going to do a lot of syrupy drinks, and again, I'm not casting any shade, that is a model. Dutch Brothers does really well with it. We have a coffee cart in front of our roastery.
Yeah.
And this is their model, and they kill it. Like people go there because they love the baristas. The customer experience is good, and they like sugary cupcake and a cup drinks.
Yeah.
And that's a model. So not casting any shade, but then price doesn't matter as much. Right? I don't have to talk much about price. But if you're going to be coffee centric, then really it kind of, some of the other advice I would give cascades from there, and one of you hit it. Like, you got to go to the roastery and see what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what is their, so it's not hard to get a roaster and roast coffee.
No.
What is hard is to build a roastery and do it well. How are you sourcing your coffee? Defects in coffee cause off flavors. How are they roasting? How fresh is the coffee you're getting? Have they considered how long they leave it off roast before you get it? Do they have industry certifications? You know, we harp on this a lot. I'm very much into the objective standard of coffee quality, and I think that's a thing. And as much as a specialty industry is trying to put woo-woo categories into specialty coffee, and I know you don't like that. So this is what makes us a good match. We balance each other. She hates it when I do that. But I mean,
I think the woo-woo categories are important. So anyway.
Yeah, this is a whole nother podcast, right? We can upset a lot of people. I can upset a lot of people with my, but I mean, so categorically, like objectively, I would look at the objective standards and the certifications that they have in that roastery. If you're going to buy a really expensive wholesale coffee, and I mean $60 and up for 5 pounds, that should be a high quality coffee. Right. They should be sourcing that with a Q grader, and someone should be grading that according to standards so that you know you're getting the highest quality coffee in the cup, and it's gonna have a certain flavor profile that you want to serve to your customers. And so if you're all about the coffee experience, that's what you should be looking for. You could also take a shortcut on that, right? And this other category, if you're going to be coffee centered, is going with a brand that people recognize as a high quality coffee.
Yes.
Right? So if, say you were serving Onyx coffee in your cafe, you're going to draw a particular kind of person that knows that that's a high quality coffee. They're going to get it. What they're going to get is going to most likely meet their expectation with coffee as long as your baristas are trained
Right.
to brew it correctly. But it can also give you a boost, right? So really focus on drink-centric or coffee-centric, because I think everything cascades down from there.
Right.
You know? I mean, if you're drink-centric, I don't think your barista training matters as much.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, for coffee drinks, it does. You know, that they're putting together the recipes for your drinks that you're
Yeah, but I'm just
creating.
saying, I think you got to be quick, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
fast, efficient, all those things, right? You want, and then, but if you're going to be coffee centric or be a specialty cafe, everything matters. The coffee quality matters, how your roastery sources it matters, how they're roasting it matters, what are they roasting it on, how knowledgeable is the roaster, right?
Yeah.
Where did they get their training? Are they certified? And some people think that you don't need a certification. What I value in that is I have been assessed by other professional roasters on whether I'm good or not.
Same. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that matters. And then that's going to dictate price, really. And I think you have to know your numbers. I've talked to many cafe owners and I'm like, what are you paying for coffee? And they're like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm like, at what point did you know what you were paying for coffee? And they're like, I don't think I've ever known what I was paying for coffee. And to me, I'm like, I don't understand that. Then, you know what I mean, how you're still in business, because you've got to know your numbers. And so some of that's dictated by market. Like how many, we were going to put a coffee bar in a place in a college town right off campus. Lots of foot traffic, lots of vehicle traffic.
Great parking lot.
Right, but we didn't, even though like I buy, because we roast our own coffee, we could actually source it cheaper, higher quality coffee, cheaper than if we wholesaled it from somebody. But even then, the market we didn't think would yield the amount of cups that we needed per day to pay for everything, right? Because you have your lease, you have your utilities, you have your equipment. If you're gonna lease your equipment, you have labor, which is like one of your highest cost items for your cafe, and then you got food, all those things. And so price matters. So I never, we aren't the cheapest wholesale coffee,
No.
right? Because we source for people that really want a high-end coffee experience. So I never, I guess, sweat anybody on wanting to get a good deal on coffee, because I just realize how much it costs to run a cafe. So anyway, so that's you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know what you want to do. And then my last piece of advice would be customer centric, not roaster centric. Now, for me, I mean, it's hard for me to say, right? I want to have a relationship with my cafes. I want to help them. I want them to give me grace. But at some point as a cafe owner, you've got to go with what your customer wants, not the relationship you have with your roaster. And we see this a lot, where people treat their roasters as if they're a founder in their business.
Yeah.
And give them a lot of grace. And I'm for that, but you've got to treat them almost like any other vendor, where this is what you wanted, this is your expectation. If they're not meeting your expectation, there's plenty other people out there that want your business as roasters and that would work hard to meet your expectations. So I would never be afraid to pivot roasters, because there's a lot of us out here.
For sure. So, and that makes me think about a category you missed.
Okay.
So the category you missed is the multi-roaster cafe. The multi-roaster cafe model is where you might have a consistent roastery you buy from all the time for something that you offer always, but you might invite other roasteries to be featured in your cafe. So you might have Ilsa one month, and you might have Half Mile one month, and you might have Onyx one month, you know, and that's a kind of fun experience for your customer to have the opportunity to try some of these more exotic, very specialty opportunities.
Yeah, right. But it's also, it really depends on where you are and what people want, you know.
Sure. And what kind of cafe you are.
Yeah. So do you have the customer base that cares about, oh, they're doing Cathedral this
Yeah.
month, or they're doing Onyx this month, and they're like, wow, that's cool. Or they let you they don't care. You're on their way to work, and they walk by you every day, and they like your coffee. And so again, I think I would sum this up with, you've got to start with what the vision of your cafe, because there's different cafes.
Right.
Cafes have different experiences. Some are coffee-centric, some are not coffee-centric, they're drink-centric. Some are more food-centric.
Definitely the bakery
Model
can be a real focus.
Yeah. So, I mean, some people are there for your baked goods, and the coffee doesn't matter as much. So, if quality, and that's a hard one too. Like, I don't want to say your quality doesn't matter to your cafe. I mean, no one would ever say that out loud, but maybe, really good commodity coffee would be a better fit than a higher price specialty coffee. I mean, I don't get that.
I love it when it's everything. When you go into a cafe and their coffee is amazing, and then they have amazing pastries also. It's just across the board amazing, but that's so rare.
Yeah, I guess it starts with, like what you said. I love the fact that the person's asking this question, because it does mean they care.
Right.
Some people are like, I've asked that people running coffee drive-thrus, hey, do you still really love coffee after all these years? And they're like, no.
Yeah, and some of them are like, I never really loved coffee. This is just, I decided to do this business.
Yeah. So I think starting with caring about the coffee and putting it into a category, I think, is a good start.
Yeah.
So, all right, and the last question. Light, medium, dark roast.
Yeah.
What's up with that, really? Like, what's the difference?
This is a Jason question.
Okay, yeah. So at the end of the day, so it's interesting. When I first started roasting, I would know if I matched my profile based on graphs or taste, right? So cupping. But I think now, and this isn't always true, I mean, you can get the same color but have it taste completely different. Right? So for us, the QC is kind of two-pronged. One, once I roast something, we have a light meter that tracks the color of a coffee. And so when you have a really light roast coffee, it's, say 80 on the score, right? From 0 to 100, it's an 80. Agtron color, not to get too geeky, but so it's Agtron color. Rating would be 80. A dark could be anything below like 50. Right. Ours, the darkest we'll go is like in the 50s, like 56, 58. Right.
And that's our Nicaraguan.
In the Brazil. We do a dark Brazil.
Dark Brazil.
And that's just about as dark as my soul will allow me to go with a coffee. Just because it starts to really lose its character and taste like everything else. And so that's really not our customer, as we, going back to the first subject. So first step is Agtron color. And then the second step is taste. So really, when you're looking at a coffee, I think, lighter roast, it's a lighter coffee. Medium roast, it's kind of a medium brown. Darker roast, everybody knows what like a really dark or a black coffee looks like. So when we're talking about light, medium, dark roast, we're talking about the color of the coffee, but then we're also talking really about the profile of that coffee, because it yields a different flavor.
Different flavor, different body, different mouthfeel. All of those things are affected by the roast.
Yeah, so as a sensory expert, why don't you give us your perspective on the differences that person can expect with a light, medium, and a dark roast coffee?
Sure. So for a proper light roast, you're going to have a sweetness, and the body is going to be lighter, and the mouthfeel can be nice and silky and syrupy. for a medium roast, obviously it's going to be more intense of a body. It'll be a little bit thicker seeming, darker seeming, darker color. And then in the mouthfeel, you should still have a good syrupy. We pick syrupy mouthfeel coffees.
Yeah.
And then in the darker roasts, you might start to get a thicker body. You might start to get a more intense flavor of maybe more bitterness involved, and you might get a rougher mouthfeel. We stay away from that bitterness, and we stay away from the rough mouthfeel. We don't particularly think that that's a preferable profile for our coffee. And on either side of these roasts, you can have defects. So if your coffee is so light that it tastes like hay, that is a defect. If your coffee is so dark, it tastes like it tastes rancid, or it starts to get oily, or it starts to taste really burnt, that's a defect. And one of the best ways to see if you have a defective coffee is if it floats in the
interesting.
like if you're brewing it, it's too late. It doesn't sink.
So in that, I guess that's called underdeveloped when it's hay-like.
Yes.
And so that's definitely a thing. But Nordic coffee, some people like that.
So to your point though, you can properly roast a Nordic coffee and keep it at a light color, but it's actually roasted.
Right.
So that's the difference. It's not a color, it's a roast profile, So just because it's light doesn't mean it's automatically going to be underdeveloped. And I would say you could have a Nordic coffee that has developed that sweet flavor and has gone past that drying phase into, a nice cup.
Yeah, and I think on the other end, I would challenge a little bit the oiliness. I think so like decafs. So we could roast a decaf and it's light, but it'll be oily in 2 days. So it's
good point.
So sometimes it's the nature of the coffee or the character of the coffee, and so and sometimes it's an indicator of age of the coffee, how oily it is, and so we'll have coffees that off roast. So interestingly, that Brazil, it's off roast a week and a half. It can get oily.
Right.
But it's still really good. And some coffees, we kind of tell people about a week in is where 1 week to 2 weeks is kind of the sweet spot for a coffee off roast. And then you've got another 2 weeks to drink it, but because it'll continue to change as it off gases. But yeah, sometimes I guess oily isn't so much of a roast defect, but it can be.
I think your nose is always the best indicator, and smell your coffee, and if it smells like fish, then
you've had coffee that smells like fish.
I would.
Yeah, I know you've tasted a lot of bad
I've
coffee.
I've smelled it. I wouldn't drink it.
That's gross.
But I smelled it.
You could probably market that as health food. It's like omega-3, rich in omega-3s.
That would probably
like fish coffee.
It'd be a lie.
You have mushroom coffee now. Maybe we could have fish coffee.
You do that, babe.
I'm always promoting. I'm always
innovation.
Promoting. Innovation is a core value. That's probably not the innovation we want. So, okay. So, did we miss anything? I think we hit all three questions. We appreciate questions, and so keep them coming. Contact at halfmilecoffee.com. We'd rather have questions that people want to keep giving me Shopify marketing deals.
Oh, right. There's so many people on Shopify that can give us 7x sales in 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, the spam is real. So we would rather hear from you and our customers or people that are interested in coffee. I'd love to keep talking to you. And so send in your questions. Thanks again for listening. If you haven't subscribed.
Yep.
And smash the like. Right, I've always wanted to say that. So smash the button so that when we post new podcasts, that you get notified about it. And we really appreciate everybody out there that continues to buy from us and support us.
Yep, thank you.
All right, see you next month.